everyone. Today I'm going to talk about different types of project, and specifically what I'm going to go into detail is what they call an optimization project. So there are different types of projects. The main ones include different types of projects, meaning categories of projects within healthcare, project management, and also business projects. In fact, healthcare, the projects usually will entail some part of either patient care on the front end or the back end, which is usually the business side of things. And so you'll find that these are the different types. There are many, but the main ones that I'm going to just list up, you will have the net new implementation projects, you have optimization and enhancement projects, you have upgrade projects, you have maintenance projects, and then you also have compliance projects and transformational projects. So what each of these entails is that a net new entails implementing something completely new, a new system, a new platform, anything that hasn't been there. An optimization project on the other hand, is one that you are adding to. In other words, it's already there, but they're making it better. It could be a system, it could be a workflow process, or anything like that. An upgrade usually means that they're adding new features to an existing process, an existing system, or anything like that. And then a maintenance is whereby it's a daily maintenance. And so they're making sure that things are working okay, things are not breaking down. If they broke down, that actually they're being resolved within a project structure. And then compliance entails usually where something has to be in place. In the healthcare field, examples are usually ensuring that maybe there's a way that patients are being asked different information, and also that maybe when they check in the front, as many of you have seen, usually they'll tell you maybe to read the HIPAA compliance to ensure that the facility is letting you know that they will follow that. However, there are many different compliances for sure. It could be in construction, it could be any other industry, but some kind of compliance whereby a body, either a government body or governing body of a certain industry, has implemented some type of compliance that has to be followed. And then a transformation, it usually will entail where there's a new mode of business that's completely different to the organization or the organization structure. And so they're making sure that they're implementing that in order to align with whatever strategic objectives or goals are for that organization or for that small business, small to medium business, SMB. And so those are the main ones. As I say today, I'm going to talk about what an optimization type category project is. So this refers usually to a systematic effort that's aimed at improving a process or a system or a project whereby it's being made more efficient, more effective, or more functional. And you find that these types of projects, are usually identified in areas where there's improvement or enhancement that's needed. So talking about that, what usually then causes the need to optimize or to enhance? You find that usually there may be some issues. Sometimes it's not issues. Sometimes it's maybe that there was phase one, let's say, of a project that had to be put in place, and maybe they had some deadlines and things had to be done fast. There are also other reasons that I'm going to go over. So very briefly, usually there may be one, there could be some kind of performance issues for existing processes. Sometimes there could be technological advances that have happened, and so these need to be implemented within the current system that a business has. And then also there could be changing business needs, whereby an organization is needing to change some goals or market demands have evolved, or existing processes need to be actually improved upon in order to align with some new targets or new strategies that they have in place. And as I said before, also, another one could be compliance, that maybe there are requirements that need to be made to ensure that, whatever the rules or the new standards or regulations are, that the system actually, or whatever the process is, following that. There are many others, but those are the main ones that I'll talk about. So, and then when we get into the project part of it, you find that there could be, again, that there was project deadlines that created this need for kind of like a second phase to be done. You find that in projects, the different projects, some will have very, very aggressive deadlines, such that they necessitate sometimes a situation whereby they will just make sure that they're standing up some kind of system or some kind of process or workflow. And then they will decide that the second part of that can be done once at least they have this in place. And this usually entails where it has to do with compliance. In healthcare, it could be from the Centers for Medicaid, which is CMS, or any other body of healthcare that has required that some kind of regulation is put in place. And so people have to enhance those systems to ensure that those regulations are being followed. The other, from a project perspective, the other reason could be budget. It could be that maybe the budget wasn't available at the time, and so they first stood up. When I say stand up, meaning that they implemented whatever system process, again, needed to be in place. And then they decided that once, there's a budget for that, they can actually make it better in the future. The other one could be lack of expertise at the time. This is very common, where maybe they needed to implement something very quickly, sooner than later. And they decide that, if maybe there was no expertise, and usually it could tie also into budget, or if it's not budget, it could also tie into just a lack of expertise, and maybe they didn't have the time to find that expertise at the time, or they tried and they couldn't find it sooner. And so they decide to go forward with what they can at least put in place, and then decide that later they'll get that expertise to help them to optimize, whatever the system is. Okay, so in this process of optimization, what are some of the steps, or what needs to get done in order to do that? So you find that the first step in any enhancement optimization is you have to utilize or come to where you utilize a tool called a gap analysis. And so what is a gap analysis? A gap analysis really is simply a strategic planning tool. And this doesn't mean that, it's an app or anything. There could be some apps, some application, but it can simply be done where you're using a spreadsheet, a Google Doc sheet, or any other sheet, spreadsheet. Like Smartsheet has sheets usually. Anyway, whereby you really use that tool to identify what the current state is, and then you find what the future state is, and then with that you find what it is that's missing, and that thing, that process, that system that is missing is usually what is called the gap. Okay, so it's usually the difference between what the current and the future state is, or the desired state of a process, system, or organization, and whatever, thing that needs to be updated or implemented. So you find that it really, really helps to understand what is working well. And this process of doing a gap analysis will help. It helps you understand what is working well, and then also what needs improvement. And then once you find that, you'll be able to identify what the gaps are or what's missing, and then allow you to really create a targeted planning and decision-making as far as what the updates or improvements that need to be made are. Okay, so having said that, then usually the steps that need to be done, like I said, you need to kind of find out what the current state is. It's not kind of, you have to find what the current state is. You do an analysis. Usually it's an in-depth analysis. Now, depending on the size of the organization, this could be done by a project manager, or if it's something, especially a big project, the project manager may need to work with some SMEs. The SMEs, which are the subject matter experts, in this case, are the people who will understand the depths of what the process of the systems are. You may find that these could be engineers, they could be analysts. In the case of businesses, they could also be the people who are using the system. It could be a CRM, it could be the automation or the workflow of, what someone does every day, let's say marketing or sales, that kind of thing. And so you would be able to work with them. But if it's usually a small organization or SMB, which is small medium business, you find that a project manager, they tend to be more close to what the processes are, and so they may have knowledge of that. In other cases, it could be a project manager that has been all these other positions before, and they have a very good in-depth knowledge of what that entails. I'm one of those. I started as a software engineer, a business analyst, so I have a very, very good understanding of what the systems and processes are within healthcare and also within business. And so in that case, if it's something like that, the project manager can do it. At the same time, you may have the knowledge, but it could not be the best use of your time. Okay, so sometimes you may have, especially if you have a good budget project and you have a team and you have some subject matter experts, you can actually pass that on, but then work with them and ensure that they have everything in place. Okay, so that's how that works. So once you have the current state, then you do the desired future state. That usually is something that will be explained in the project statement or the project charter, so that you know what the outcome looks like or needs to look like. And also, if it's that you're working with the business people, you will have to include them also in this process. There's going to be not just, when I say subject matter experts, it's going to be the people who either on the tech side, on the technical side, or on the business side, and sometimes it's both of them. So those people have to be in the same room to do this kind of thing. And then also there'll be, once you identify what that is, you identify the gap, and then you then make sure that you're planning for what needs to happen to close that gap or to implement what changes need to be done. And then afterwards, you follow that project, which is the project in place that has to be done. Okay, so I want to show you a little bit of some examples here of some projects and where we do demos. So I'm going to just share my screen here and show you. So here, this is a very good example of a demo, and this is how I came up with it. So it's a hypothetical situation, but I know very well that these happen. I've worked on them. So that's the reason that I came up with this. So within healthcare, for example, the example project that I talked about is that, okay, we have a problem. The problem is that we have a medical group, for example, could be a hospital, by the way, but I'm just using a primary care medical group. That's a big one. They have about 10 locations in different, parts of the town or the state. And that we're trying to see how we can really improve the scheduling, because there are different problems. People schedule different things. Someone will schedule a provider in one place, and then someone else changes them. And so you find that either there are no shows or the provider is double booked. And so that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to move the medical group going from what they call a decentralized scheduling, whereby each location schedules their appointments, to where it's just one centralized scheduling type of business model, business structure. Okay. So here, as an example, what you'll do, you create a doc and you call this whatever the name of the particular item is. In this case, I call it the workflow process for this. So this is where it's going to address patient scheduling, where you have the patient is scheduled and then up to when they come in to see the provider. The provider could be a doctor, it could be a nurse, it could be a nurse practitioner, it could be a physical therapist, any kind of other therapist. There are many: physical, speech, occupational, and all of those. So that is what this entails. Okay, so we have a process that's called appointment scheduling. The current process is each location schedules their own, does their own scheduling independently. The future state is what we want it to be centralized. We want all of it to be in one location. And they will, be they will be scheduling patients from one place. So for that, the strategic improvement consideration would be to streamline scheduling in order to reduce redundancy. Redundancy usually means that there's repetition, like I said before, repetition or people doing the same thing, or whereby different people are scheduling a provider and sometimes they may schedule it wrong for particular locations. They may schedule that provider in another location when they were scheduled in another location. Now, as a system, usually someone will be able to see that, but again, it also goes back into like projects. Sorry, it goes back into finances. Okay, whereby you have more than enough people that are doing the same thing when you could have a centralized location. Unfortunately for that, they may have to let some people go many times, because when they consolidate that, they need less people than where each location can schedule someone. Okay, so that's the reason I was hesitant. I'm not advocating for letting people go, but that's the reality actually of many of the bigger providers out there, especially like hospitals or hospital provider groups. Okay. So, and then you have like patient gathering. Here, I'm not going to go through each one, but what I want to show is what each of those can entail. So you have patient gathering information. The information is collected at each location. Here, if it's centralized, it's much better. Why? Because we have data that's consistent, and I'll get into that, why it's consistent or why it's not consistent. So the need for that is to integrate the patient information systems, integrate them better. Most of currently the process, the many provider groups have actually consolidated that, but sometimes they're not. However, again, this is hypothetical, so it may not be like it applies to every provider group out there. So then the confirmation process, again, each location, but we want it to be unified. This is where I am. And then the consideration is to improve efficiency and the patient experience, so that not many people are calling the patient from different locations. There's only one, and everyone is seeing that one, instance of the patient being scheduled. And this is to standardize the confirmation procedures or processes. This goes to here, consistency. You find that if they're different location, usually every location has a different way of doing things, and it just doesn't give a good experience. So these are the different processes. You have rescheduling, you have reporting, staff training, decentralized training. Then you make it, remember, again, this is current state. Let me just actually change that view to where I can, my little window here. freeze the panes here. Okay, so that is, I can see it. Okay, so we have staff training here. I said decentralized training. When it's centralized in one, everyone is trained on the same processes or procedures. It's much better. Again, I'm on this line. And then here you ensure there's consistent training and procedures. So you develop a centralized training program, okay? People are trained on the same way. Technology integration, disparate means they were different across the locations. So you create a unified technology platform, and because it's one, there's only that one. So everyone will see the same thing. So you ensure consistent you ensure that there's interoperability that's enhanced, and it creates more efficiency. So what needs to get done is to integrate and replace the existing systems, or if the system was the same and before that they were implemented at each location, what needs to happen is that they will centralize it and remove it from being location based, okay? And then we go to compliance, the last part here, number 10. I'm just skipping over some of them. You'll find that compliance and regulations, they're managed separately at each location. When you have a centralized type, it's unified. And then what happens is the consideration, it ensures uniformity in following the legal and regulatory requirements. And so what needs to be done is to standardize the compliance procedures and processes, okay? So that's what that is. And then I'm going to show you what at least I did for some of my past clients. So here, within healthcare, there's what they call HL7. This is a little bit detailed, but I'm just showing you as an example. The HL7 is whereby it's a language in moving data from one system to the next, or moving data from different applications to the next. So within healthcare, we do move data, different data, and I'm not going to go into the details because it's very complex. But what we do is that there's different data that's called admissions. It's ADT, admissions, discharge, and transfers. And then you go into the scheduling, and then you go further down. So this really follows the patient journey, okay? And I'm just showing you high level here. So what happens, because it's very detailed, so what happens is that they're called transaction sets for each one. They have different codes, different numbers. Like I said, it's a bit detailed, different segments. But without going into that, the example that I want to give you is, if you skip all of this at the top, here you have maybe the mapping. Here we do the mapping. In other words, you make sure that this type, little bit of data that's being sent is actually sent the right way, or it's sent with the right type of information, okay? So this is just the comments that have to happen. But the main thing here is this highlighted area here, column or, where it's the suggestion resolution to the gap that's found, okay? So where it's not, there's nothing to be changed, but I'm going to scroll down here just to show you some examples. So you find that this one, I'm going to just enlarge that. We'll say that translate that table to the billing provider, okay? So what was this? Let's see what this was. Billing provider, last name, organization. So this was the bill, by the way, I didn't do a disclaimer. There's no patient data here. These are the standard types of segments for HL7 language. Out there, it's very standard. It's however, it can be changed depending on what each organization wants to change. So just so you know, I'm very, very strict, especially with healthcare and HIPAA. So there's no patient data here. This is not data. This is just the elements, as we call them, data elements. So when you see here, for example, NM, that means name. That's usually the provider name or last name. And what it's saying here that has to be updated is a translation table to the billing provider. Here is to make sure that we are making sure that that is the name that's being sent correctly. And you see here box because these are translated onto a paper claim. Okay, there's so many different pieces of that, and so each one on the back end, actually these are programmed to send that information. And so when for example a claim is printed out, you find that the right data, if it's done right, is being printed out under each box and each piece of data within that box. And I'll show you what that may look like. Okay, so this is a good example. Some of them, again, same thing here to the provider. And then here you go into the different pieces. I won't go into this again because it's complicated. But let me show you another one. So hopefully you're seeing this. Let me see. I'm just making sure that you're seeing what I'm saying. Oh, that wasn't. We're still on the first one. Okay, let me just go back here. I hadn't changed it, unfortunately. Zoom, you need to explicitly change. So I'm going to just go back here a bit. Okay, so this is the example. As I say, data set. This is what I was referring to. That's the one where we find the gap and we explicitly say what we need to do for that. So when you scroll down, if there's nothing, not everything is okay. But where we find some notes, that's where something needs to be changed. So I was talking about this, that here, this piece of data is a name, particularly here, when you see NM, that means name. It's the last name of the provider, billing provider. And so we look and see, okay, is it changing that correctly, or is it, sorry, sending that correctly, or is it not? In this case, it wasn't. And so that's what we do. We make sure that we're changing that. Let me just, okay. We make sure that we're changing that, and, we put the note here. So I was talking about the box. The box here really is on the claim, a paper claim, as we call them. It sends the data. On the back end, there's a lot of things happening on the back end within the system on the IT side. Okay. Same thing here, making sure that we are sending the right information. And then this is what I was saying, that initialization, NI, and all of that. These are a bit more complex, so I won't go into them. But all I want to show you is that when you have a gap analysis tool, you can really go line by line, depending on what it is, to see what changes that you need to make, okay? All right, so that's one. The next one I'm going to show you also. Let me just change it over. I'm just making sure it's this one. Okay, this one is also where, let's go, where are we? Okay, yeah. So this one is where, we're looking at screens. When I say screens, again, just a disclaimer, there's no patient data. This just refers only to what particular things are going to be changed. So in this example, it was changing a screen, trying to see that, okay, should we include this? Should we include that? And those are the items that we're determining to be changed. So as you can see here, there was going to be a redesign. By the way, here also, there's going to be a product design. Changing up the design of what the screen looks like. And that's why you see here, we're saying, okay, this will stay, that will need to be removed, and that kind of thing. And then in this case here, as you can see, decisions were being made, what to do. And so that's what entails the gap. Let me just highlight this also blue. what needs to be done. Okay, so these are the examples. You go through each section, and then you determine what needs to be changed and what needs to not be changed. So those are the kinds of things. Okay, so anyway, that's what a gap analysis entails, and I hope this was helpful. Again, a gap analysis, you're trying to find out what the future state will be, and then you determine what steps or actions to take in order to bring that to the future state. And then you work, after everything is determined, you work on the project as you would, and ensure that everything is followed and things, are done as it should. Okay. So thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. In the end, all you have to do is create that tool, a gap analysis tool, and ensure that, you've identified what the gaps are, and therefore you are able to optimize and enhance whatever that is. It could be an application, it could be a workflow, it could be a system. And then hopefully this, you get to the state that you want to be with your project. Hopefully this was great, it was helpful. Again, I do give training for this. If you want to have any questions, feel free to DM me or to contact me. There'll be, a few notes within the video itself, and I'll be posting that. Thank you so much. Bye.